I want to start by saying that I really like Dragonflight. The zones are beautiful, the dungeons are fun, dragon riding is cool, I like the story, and I think the Incarnates are the best villains we've had for a long time. I really like Dragonflight in general, but it has a major problem. WoW has become too complicated, and it's hurting the game. I'm going to skip over all the pre-Dragonflight content, because I feel like I've talked enough about it in my previous videos. Let's start with the most obvious part, which is combat. Standard rotations are getting a bit absurd. You end up with nearly a dozen abilities depending on your class and spec, all of which have an encyclopedia of effects, and you're expected to juggle a bunch of buffs and debuffs while also handling all the fight mechanics thrown your way. I mean, look at Incarnation when every Berserk talent is taken. It reduces the cooldown on Mangle, Thrash, and Growl by 50%, increases haste by 15%, reduces the rage cost of Maul and Iron Fur by 50%, reduces the cooldown on Frenzied Regen by 100%, causes Mangle to hit 3 targets, and increases maximum health by 30%. Or we could look at Sentinel for Protection Paladins. It increases damage and healing by 20%, allows Hammer of Wrath to be cast on targets with more than 20% health, causes Judgment to generate 2 holy power, and finally, it gives 15 stacks of a buff that increases maximum health by 1% per stack and reduces damage taken by 2% per stack. But after 5 seconds, you lose 1 stack per second, but each 3 holy power spent delays the next loss by 1 second. Both of those abilities are way too complicated, but I guess you could argue that they're major CDs, so it's fine. So let's look at active mitigation. For druids, there's Iron Fur, which is the main rage dump and increases armor. Keeping Moonfire on the target reduces damage they deal to you by 10%. Tooth and Claw procs cause your next Maul to add another 15% damage reduction. If you pick up Earth Warden, you reduce the next auto attack against you by 30% every time you use Thrash. Frenzied Regen heals you over a few seconds and increases the healing you take while active. And normally, while I'd consider Barkskin a cooldown, it only has a 32-second CD, but has a duration of 14 seconds when fully spec'd, so it might as well be counted here too. But maybe that's just an anomaly. So let's do the same thing for Protection Paladins. We have Shield of the Righteous, the main holy power dump that increases armor. Consecrate grants damage reduction when stood in. Blessed Hammer reduces the damage of the next attack against you. Avenger's Shield increases your block chance, grants an Absorb Shield, and gives you a stacking buff that reduces damage taken. Word of Glory heals you and gives you even more block chance. And finally, we have the Of Dusk and Dawn talent, which is honestly just too complicated all on its own. That's just the active mitigation portion of these specs. And all of that comes before we even bring up the numerous cooldowns given to players, fight mechanics, or other players in your group. I mean, look at this fight. Sure, a seasoned WoW player might be able to tell what's going on if they pay close enough attention, but to the untrained eye, this is an absolute clusterfuck. The amount of things you're expected to keep track of is simply too much. Now you could say get good or learn to play, but try to imagine this from a new player's perspective, or even someone that hasn't played since Wrath or Kata. This is so overwhelming that it's off-putting. And on a side note, I want to make 2 things clear. The first is that complexity is not the same thing as difficulty. And the second is complexity is not the same thing as depth. Look at games like DDR or Tetris. No one is going to argue that these games are too easy. But any boomer who spends more than 5 seconds watching someone play will understand almost entirely of how it's played. Complexity is like spiciness in food. The right amount can really enhance the flavor. But if you overdo it, you're just going to be crying in the fetal position as both ends of your digestive tract burn. And I think Blizzard has overdone the complexity here. But it doesn't stop with combat. Let's talk about the Dragonflight professions. Seriously, why? Why do I need to watch a 30-minute video just to gain a vague understanding of how the system works? It's so overly convoluted and confusing that I've pretty much given up on even training them. I'll probably just pick up double gathering professions on all of my characters and pretend like the others don't exist at this point. I like that you can make gear that's relevant. That was a good change. And the new interface looks nice, but why do I need a PhD to figure out how to use it? Between the Artisan's Medal, finishing reagents, RNG, and whatever other BS that's been forced in there, the current iterations of professions has driven me away from even interacting with them. Something I firmly believe is that any crafting system in any game needs to be intuitive. You should be able to pick it up and pretty much understand how it works almost instantly. Minecraft is a good example of this. You may not know what you need or how to arrange it to make every single item, but you will have an understanding of how every item is made in the first minute of the game. It's simple and intuitive, but at the same time, it's very deep. WoW is basically the opposite of that. Now let's talk about the new upgrade system, and oh boy, where to start here. I don't mind that you can upgrade items. I don't even mind that you can upgrade them 8 times. But when it takes nearly half a dozen currencies and just as many upgrade tracks, it becomes too much. I understand why all the different crests exist. They want to gatekeep better gear behind harder content, and whether you agree with it or not, it has been a thing in WoW for its entire existence. But Flightstones are one of the most pointless currencies I think I've ever seen. Just use gold. It's been so inflated and has been in desperate need of a good sink, and this would have been the perfect opportunity for it. And while we're on the subject, Whelpling crests probably didn't need to exist either. Then there's the time gating, the catch-up mechanics, and the completely arbitrary choice to double the amount of currencies by breaking crests into fragments, which is just a headache to keep track of, and kind of make me not want to engage with the system at all. In addition, we have the cost reduction for pieces after the first, which, while nice, just adds to the overall convolution of the system in general. The different upgrade tracks, on the other hand, are completely arbitrary. You're already locking crests behind harder content, so why can't I upgrade the low-end stuff all the way up if I do the content? All this really accomplishes is player confusion. It was nice of them to include the heroic dungeon loot in on this system, but why not add it to Vault of the Incarnates too? Or for all that Primalist gear I just farmed in the Forbidden Reach? Or for time walking gear? For a system that is so over-designed, it sure failed to include a lot of content. The bottom line is, if you have a system in a game that requires you to watch a video, read a guide, or make an Excel spreadsheet just to learn how to engage with it, you've already failed. And I'm not talking about players using these things to min-max. I'm talking about the basic understanding of mechanics. If a new player has to tab out of the game to learn how to have fun, you're going to lose that new player. There is no greater strength in a game than being intuitive. A player being able to easily understand something makes them feel smart and preserves immersion. Simplicity is not a bad thing, and it doesn't automatically make something easy or shallow, just as complexity doesn't automatically make something difficult or deep. I could go on and talk about the numerous currencies, of which most have been rendered useless, or the absolute laundry list of weekly chores you're expected to do, but I think I've made my point. WoW is just too complicated these days. Seriously, take a step back and look at it. Can you honestly say that this is appealing to new players? Because I can't. It's almost completely unapproachable to them. And that's before you even factor in the mess that is the new player leveling experience, or the myriad of abandoned systems from previous expansions. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and have a nice day.